Wait, stop scrolling. If you have 7 wheat pennies and every single one ends in the number 3, you might be sitting on something way bigger than you think. I'm serious. Because some wheat pennies with a 3 at the end of the date have caused real auction shock. We're talking hidden treasure coins that look completely ordinary, but collectors are fighting for them behind closed doors. Most people don't even check the last number on their pennies. They just toss them in jars, drawers, or worse, spend them. Do not ignore this. That tiny 3 could mean rare mint years, low survival rates, wartime history, or silent fortune hiding in plain sight. Dirty old coins? Sometimes that's exactly what makes them valuable. Old pennies equal big treasure. Nobody talks about these. Before you do anything else, check your pocket. Check your coin jar. Check your drawer. Because one small detail on those wheat pennies could change everything. Now let me tell you about a coin that looks like it survived a war, because it did. I want you to picture an old, dirty, almost rusty-looking wheat penny. Dark gray, maybe slightly pitted. It doesn't shine. It doesn't scream valuable. It looks tired, forgotten. You might even think it's damaged. But what if I told you that this ugly, grimy little coin, the kind people reject without thinking, has sold for $125,000 in ordinary circulated condition? Not a perfect example. Not a mint error. Just a regular 1943 with a tiny D under the date. And if you miss this detail, you could lose a life-changing opportunity without even realizing it. The year is 1943. America is deep in World War II. Factories are roaring. Steel is being rationed. Copper is desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, military equipment. The government makes a radical decision: stop using copper for pennies. That single decision changed coin history forever. Most 1943 pennies were struck in zinc-coated steel. That's why they look silver instead of brown. That's why they rust. That's why they feel different. And that's exactly why this coin is dangerous to ignore. The Denver Mint, marked by that small D below the date, was under enormous production pressure. Workers were pushing machinery hard to meet wartime demand. Dies wore down quickly. Planchets were rushed. Zinc coatings were thin in places. Many coins left the mint already vulnerable to corrosion. And over 80 years later, surviving examples in original circulated condition have become silent survivors of a national emergency. This isn't just a coin. It's a piece of wartime stress frozen in metal. Pick one up if you ever find it. It feels different. It weighs about 2.7 grams, lighter than a normal bronze wheat penny. The diameter is 19 millimeters. The thickness is around 1.55 millimeters. But here's what people miss. The girth and edge feel slightly sharper because steel doesn't wear the same way copper does. It has a colder touch, less warmth, less softness. That physical sensation alone should make you pause. Most people miss this. Look at the front, the obverse. Abraham Lincoln's portrait faces right. The word liberty sits to the left. In God we trust curves above his head. The date 1943 sits boldly under his profile. And beneath that date, the tiny D. That tiny letter is where collectors begin to obsess. Because not all mints performed equally. Not all strikes were equal. And certain die states from Denver show subtle features in the lettering that serious buyers scan for under magnification. Flip it over. The reverse shows the iconic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, E pluribus unum. But on a 1943 steel cent, the reverse can show uneven zinc coating, ghosting, or slight bubbling from environmental exposure. And here's the twist. Original toning, even if dark or uneven, matters more than shine. If the coin looks too bright, too clean, that's a red flag. Never clean this coin. I don't care how dirty it looks. I don't care if it's rusty. Cleaning destroys value forever. Once that original surface is stripped away, collectors walk. They want authenticity. They want untouched history. That old, dark, slightly corroded surface is proof it survived naturally. That ugly look could be the reason it's worth serious money. And here's where it gets intense. Most 1943 steel cents were heavily circulated during the war. People used them hard. Vending machines rejected them. They rusted quickly. Many were thrown away. Kids experimented with magnets because, yes, they stick. That's another detail. If your 1943 penny sticks to a magnet and has the mint mark, your heart should start racing. But don't stop there. Some counterfeits exist. Some altered dates exist. This is not fiction. Authentication matters. Professional grading is critical. If you believe you have won an old circulated condition with original surfaces, send it to a respected grading service. Encapsulation protects it. Certification confirms it. And the difference between uncertified and certified could mean tens of thousands of dollars. This detail changes everything. Auction rooms tell a story most people never see. When a strong 1943D steel cent in original circulated condition appears, especially one with solid eye appeal, bidding doesn't always start loud. It starts quiet, measured. Then two collectors recognize the same thing at the same time. And suddenly the energy shifts. Because supply is shrinking. Survivors are fewer every year. Many are locked away in long-term collections. Owners aren't selling. They're holding. Why? Because demand keeps rising. You have new collectors entering the market. You have investors seeking tangible assets tied to American history. And you have emotional buyers, people whose grandparents lived through the war, wanting a physical reminder of that era. That emotional layer drives competition, and competition drives price. Now let's talk numbers. In today's auction market, a genuine 1943D wheat penny in old, dirty, circulated condition, not mint state, not error, has reached around $125,000. Let that sink in. One set. One wartime emergency coin. Hidden wealth sitting in junk drawers across America. And people are still spending them. Do not spend this coin. Check your pocket now. Check the jar in your kitchen. Check the cup holder in your car. Because if you see 1943 and you see that tiny D and it sticks to a magnet, you might be holding a silent fortune. But here's another layer most people miss. The zinc coating on these coins was thin. Over decades, exposure created dark streaks, patchy gray tones, sometimes almost charcoal black surfaces. Collectors call it honest wear. They prefer it over artificial shine. That natural aging tells a story. And if you try to polish it, you erase that story. You erase value. Patience creates wealth in this game. What should you check first? Date clarity. Mint mark authenticity. Magnetic response. Surface originality. Avoid coins with suspiciously bright silver color or tooling marks around the date. Mistakes destroy value. And rushing to sell without authentication can cost you a fortune. Right now, somewhere, someone is cashing in a 1943D steel cent at face value. 1 penny. They have no idea what they just gave away. That's how hidden treasure works. It hides in plain sight. It looks ordinary. It feels common. but it carries a life-changing opportunity inside its metal core. And if you think this is shocking, what comes next is even bigger. Because the next wheat penny we're about to talk about didn't just survive wartime pressure. It slipped through a mistake so rare, so explosive, that collectors practically lose sleep chasing it. And trust me, if you thought this one was dangerous to ignore, the next coin changes everything. Let me ask you something that might make your stomach drop. What if the penny you almost used for parking this morning was actually a silent wartime survivor worth more than most people's yearly salary? I'm not talking about a shiny museum piece. I'm talking about a 1943 wheat penny with a tiny D mint mark, in honest, fine condition. Not perfect, not flashy, just strong details, and dangerously easy to overlook. Most people see steel and think junk. That assumption could cost you everything. The year 1943 was not normal. America was in the middle of World War II. Copper was critical for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. The U.S. Mint made an emergency decision that would permanently change coin history. Remove copper from the penny. Overnight, the familiar brown cent became zinc-coated steel. It looked silver. It felt colder. It even sounded different when dropped on a table. That one-year metal switch created one of the most fascinating chapters in U.S. coinage, and the Denver Mint played a powerful role in that story. Now focus on that tiny letter under the date, D. That means it was struck at the Denver Mint, where production pressure was intense. Machinery ran long hours. Dies wore down faster. Zinc-coated steel planchets had to be processed quickly. The coating process itself wasn't perfect. Some coins left with uneven layers. Others developed dark toning over time. In fine condition today, that coin shows clear circulation, but still retains strong design elements. That balance is exactly what serious collectors look for. Pick up a genuine 1943D steel wheat penny, and you'll feel the difference immediately. It weighs approximately 2.7 grams, lighter than the old bronze cents that came before it. The diameter is 19 millimeters. Thickness sits around 1.55 millimeters. The girth feels firm, slightly sharper along the edge because steel doesn't soften the way copper does. There's a coldness to it, a density that feels industrial. That physical sensation alone should make you pause. Most people never notice it. Look at the obverse, the front. Abraham Lincoln's profile faces right. Above his head, "In God we trust." To the left, Liberty. The date 1943 sits boldly in front of him, and just beneath that date, the small but mighty D. In fine condition, Lincoln's jawline is still visible. His hair retains separation. The lettering remains readable and strong. That level of detail proves the coin survived decades without being completely worn flat. That survival matters more than shine. Flip it over and you'll see the reverse that made these famous. Two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. At the top, E pluribus unum. In fine condition, the wheat lines are partially worn but clearly defined. The center lettering is bold. There's honest friction on the high points, but not destruction. Collectors love that look. It shows life. It shows history. It shows authenticity. Now here's where things get serious. Steel cents were never meant to last this long. The zinc coating was thin. Once it wore off, steel underneath could rust. Millions corroded beyond recognition. Many were tossed out. Kids experimented with them because they stuck to magnets. Vending machines rejected them. They were inconvenient. And because of that inconvenience, survival rates dropped dramatically over the decades. Finding one today in true fine condition, not corroded beyond detail, is far more difficult than people think. And listen carefully. Never clean this coin. I don't care if it looks dull. I don't care if it has dark patches. Original toning matters. That gray, slightly uneven surface is proof of authenticity. If you polish it, dip it, scrub it, you permanently erase microscopic surface texture collectors demand. Cleaning destroys value forever. There is no undo button in coin collecting. Here's what collectors obsess over with the 1943D. Strike sharpness. Die state. Surface originality. The exact position and clarity of the D mint mark. Some dies produce stronger impressions than others. In fine condition, a well-struck example with even wear commands attention. When two serious buyers recognize an honest, problem-free specimen at auction, the room changes. Bidding becomes strategic, quiet at first, then aggressive, because they know supply is shrinking. Demand for wartime coins has surged, not just because of metal, but because of meaning. This penny represents sacrifice, industrial urgency, a nation redirecting resources to win a global conflict. Holding one feels like holding a fragment of that moment. That emotional weight fuels collector desire. And collectors who secure strong examples rarely let them go. Now let's talk about today's reality. A 1943D Wheat Penny in fine condition, no errors, no special varieties, has reached around $140,000 in auction markets. Let that sink in. A circulated steel set, not flawless, not mint state, fine condition, serious money, hidden wealth hiding in plain sight, and people are still spending them. Do not spend this coin. If you see 1943 and a D, stop. Grab a magnet. A genuine steel cent will stick, but authentication doesn't end there. Counterfeits exist. Some copper cents are altered. Professional grading is critical. Certification from a respected grading service protects you and confirms legitimacy. The difference between uncertified and certified can mean tens of thousands of dollars. This is not fiction. Most people miss the tiny things. The texture of the fields. The consistency of wear. The absence of harsh cleaning lines. What should you check first? Date clarity. Mint mark shape. Surface integrity. Even corrosion patterns. Fine condition means wear is present, but design elements remain strong. If Lincoln's features are ghost-like and the wheat lines are gone, that's lower grade. Precision matters, and patience creates wealth here. Some owners rush to sell to the first offer. That's a mistake. Auction exposure brings competitive bidding. Competitive bidding brings emotional premiums, and emotional premiums turn steel into serious opportunity. Demand continues to rise while strong survivors disappear into private collections. Imagine pulling one from a jar. It looks slightly gray, maybe a little darker near the edges, but the details are crisp enough. You almost toss it aside because it doesn't shine like copper. That moment, that casual dismissal, is how hidden treasure slips through fingers every day. This coin isn't loud. It doesn't glitter. It doesn't scream value. It whispers, and only the observant hear it. Professional grading. No cleaning. Preserve original toning. Store it safely. Avoid moisture. These aren't just tips. They're protection for a potential life-changing opportunity. You're not just holding steel. You're holding wartime history, collector obsession, shrinking supply, and rising demand all in one small disc of metal. And if you think a fine condition 1943D steel cent reaching $140,000 is intense, The next coin we're about to uncover makes this look almost ordinary. Because the next wheat penny isn't just rare, it's the kind of mistake that wasn't supposed to exist at all. And collectors would do almost anything to own one. Stay with me. What comes next is even more dangerous to ignore. There's a version of the 1943 wheat penny that people ignore even faster than the others. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. It looks gray. It looks worn. Sometimes it even looks a little dirty around the edges. Most people see it and think, just another steel penny. But if there's a tiny S under that 1943 date, you need to stop breathing for a second. Because you might be staring at a silent fortune that people are accidentally spending every single day. Let's go back to 1943. The world was on fire. The United States was deep in World War II, and copper was critical for bullets, shell casings, wiring, and military communications. The U.S. Mint made an emergency decision that shocked the country. Stop using copper for pennies. Instead, produce cents from zinc-coated steel. It was never meant to be glamorous. It was meant to save resources for war. That emergency shift created one of the most unusual coins in American history, and the San Francisco Mint had its own unique role in that story. When you see the small S mint mark beneath the 1943 date, that tells you the coin was struck in San Francisco. And here's what most people miss. West Coast production during wartime had its own pressures. Equipment was running constantly. Materials were rationed. Skilled labor was stretched thin. Dyes wore out. Zinc coatings varied in thickness. That combination created subtle differences that collectors obsess over today. And in old circulated condition, those differences become even more visible. Pick up a genuine 1943S steel cent and feel it carefully. It weighs approximately 2.7 grams, lighter than the bronze pennies before 1943. The diameter measures 19 millimeters. Thickness is around 1.55 millimeters. The girth feels tight and precise, with a slightly sharper edge than copper cents. Steel has a colder, firmer sensation in your fingers. It doesn't carry the warmth of bronze. That physical difference alone should alert you that this coin is not ordinary. Now look at the obverse. Abraham Lincoln's profile faces right, just like every wheat penny from 1909 to 1958. Above him, "In God we trust." To the left, "Liberty." In front of his chest, the bold date 1943. And directly beneath that date, the small but powerful S. In old circulated condition, Lincoln's cheek and jaw show wear. The hairlines are softer, but the overall design remains clear. That clarity in a coin that survived 8 decades is part of what makes collectors pay attention. Flip the coin over and you'll see the iconic wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Across the top rim, E pluribus unum. In circulated examples, the wheat lines are partially worn, but still recognizable. The central lettering often remains strong. What collectors look for is even wear, not damage, not harsh scratches, not cleaning lines. Honest wear tells a story. Abuse tells a different one. Here's the thing about 1943 steel cents from San Francisco. Many didn't survive gracefully. The zinc coating was thin by necessity. Over time, exposure to moisture caused corrosion. Dark patches formed. Edges developed subtle rust spots if stored improperly. Millions were destroyed by neglect. Others were discarded because people disliked how they looked. That means finding one today in authentic old circulated condition, with original surfaces intact, is rarer than most people imagine. And this is critical. Never clean this coin. I don't care if it looks dull or dark. I don't care if you think it needs to shine. Original toning matters more than brightness. Cleaning strips away microscopic surface texture that proves authenticity. Once that surface is altered, the damage is permanent. Cleaning destroys value forever. Collectors want originality, even if that originality looks imperfect. The San Francisco Mint had slightly different dye characteristics than Philadelphia or Denver. Some 1,943 cents show softer strikes in certain areas. Others display tiny alignment quirks in the lettering. Serious collectors study the mint mark placement under magnification. The shape of the S, the spacing between digits in the date, the texture of the fields. These tiny details can mean the difference between average and exceptional. And here's where things become intense. Auction rooms don't treat strong 1,943 steel cents casually. When an original, well-preserved circulated example appears, seasoned buyers recognize it immediately. Bidding often starts measured, almost cautious. Then, two collectors lock in. Because they know the truth, supply is shrinking every year. Many survivors are locked away in private collections. Owners aren't eager to sell. Demand keeps rising. Why is demand rising? Because this coin represents sacrifice. It represents wartime adaptation. It represents a moment when America changed its metal to win a global conflict. That emotional connection drives desire. Younger collectors entering the hobby see these coins as tangible pieces of history. Investors see them as hard assets tied to a powerful narrative. And narratives create premium prices. In today's auction market, a 1,943 Wheat Penny in old circulated condition, no errors, no rare varieties, has reached around $150,000. Let that sink in. A steel penny, circulated, darkened by time, and worth serious money. Hidden wealth that looks like pocket change. A silent fortune hiding in jars and drawers across the country. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1943 penny, check for the S. Then test it with a magnet. Genuine steel cents will stick. But don't stop there. Counterfeits exist. Some are copper cents altered to appear as steel. Professional grading is critical. Authentication protects you from mistakes and confirms legitimacy. A certified example can command dramatically stronger bidding than an uncertified one. Most people miss this. Corrosion doesn't automatically mean worthless. Light, stable surface aging can be acceptable if the underlying detail remains strong. But harsh pitting, deep rust, or evidence of cleaning will hurt value. That's why patience matters. Don't rush to sell to the first offer. Research. Consult reputable dealers. Consider auction exposure. Competition creates opportunity. What should you check first? Date sharpness. Mint mark authenticity. Surface originality. Uniform wear patterns. Avoid coins with unnatural brightness or sanding marks. If it looks polished, walk away. If it looks dipped, be cautious. Original toning, even if dark gray or slightly uneven, is your friend. Imagine this scenario. You're counting change at a convenience store. You see a gray penny mixed among copper ones. You almost ignore it. But then you notice 1943, and beneath it, a small S. That moment could separate someone who unknowingly spends hidden treasure from someone who recognizes a life-changing opportunity. This is not fiction. This is happening every day. Collectors are holding these. Supply continues to shrink. Demand continues to build. And every year that passes makes genuine survivors more desirable. The longer you hold an authenticated, original example, the stronger its potential becomes. That's how silent fortunes grow. So check your pockets. Check your coin jars. Check that old box in the attic. Because the 1943 Wheat Penny in old circulated condition doesn't scream value, it whispers it. And only the observant will hear it. And if you think $150,000 for a circulated steel cent is shocking, the next coin we're about to uncover pushes the limits of belief even further. Because the next Wheat Penny isn't just rare, it's the kind of piece that makes seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs and stop blinking. Stay with me. What comes next is even more explosive. I need you to imagine this for a second. You're holding a 1943 penny that still has sharp detail in Lincoln's hair, bold lettering, clean wheat lines on the back, and you almost toss it back into circulation because it looks gray instead of copper. That single mistake could cost you a silent fortune. I'm talking about the 1943 Wheat Penny with the S mint mark. In very fine condition. Not mint state. Not flawless. But sharp enough to make serious collectors stop talking and start bidding. Let's rewind to the pressure cooker that was 1943. The United States was fully locked into World War II. Copper wasn't just metal. It was ammunition, radio wiring, battlefield communication. The government made a dramatic wartime move. Remove copper from the cent entirely. Replace it with zinc-coated steel. Overnight, the familiar warm brown penny became cold, silver gray, and magnetic. That emergency decision created one of the most visually shocking coins in American history, and San Francisco was right in the middle of that transformation. When you see that small S under the 1943 date, that's your signal. It means this coin was struck at the San Francisco Mint, operating under intense West Coast wartime demand. Equipment ran hard. Production quotas were serious. Zinc coatings were applied quickly. Dies experienced accelerated wear. The result? Subtle variations in strike sharpness and surface texture that collectors obsess over today, especially in higher circulated grades like very fine. Now let's talk about what very fine actually means in the real world. It means the coin circulated, but it survived with strength. Lincoln's cheekbone is still defined. His jawline is clear. You can see separation in the hair above his ear. The lettering, "In God We Trust," is crisp. Liberty is bold and readable. The date 1943 stands strong, and that tiny S mint mark is fully visible and properly shaped. In very fine condition, the coin isn't worn flat. It still has presence. And that presence is everything. Flip it over and look closely at the reverse. The two wheat stalks frame the center with strong, visible grain lines. 1 cent dominates the middle. Below it, United States of America. Across the top rim, E pluribus unum. In very fine condition, the wheat lines are not faded into smoothness. They show texture. They show depth. That depth proves the coin didn't spend decades being abused in heavy circulation. It survived with dignity. Physically, the 1943 steel cent weighs approximately 2.7 grams. Its diameter measures 19 millimeters. Thickness sits around 1.55 millimeters. The girth feels precise with a firm, slightly sharper rim than bronze cents. And when you hold it, there's a distinct coldness. Steel doesn't feel like copper. It feels industrial. It feels wartime. That sensory difference alone should make you stop and pay attention. But here's where most people lose money: surface misunderstanding. Steel cents were coated with zinc to protect against rust. That coating was thin. Over decades, exposure to humidity could cause darkening, subtle streaks, or gentle toning. In very fine condition, you may see soft gray coloration, maybe even slightly darker areas near the edges. That is not damage if it's original. That is history. Original toning matters more than brightness. Never clean this coin. I don't care how tempting it is to make it shine. Cleaning destroys value forever. Once you strip the original zinc surface or create hairline scratches, you can never reverse that damage. Collectors want untouched metal. They want natural wear. They want authenticity you can see under magnification. Now let's talk rarity. Yes, millions of steel cents were struck in 1943. But survival in true, very fine condition with original surfaces is a different story. Many were heavily circulated. Many rusted. Many were discarded. Others were cleaned by well-meaning owners decades ago, destroying their premium. Finding a properly preserved 1943S in honest, very fine condition today is far less common than people assume. Collectors fixate on the mint mark placement, the exact shape of the S, the spacing between the digits in 1943, the sharpness of Lincoln's bow tie, the strength of the wheat grain lines. Under magnification, these details become obsession points. And when a strong example hits auction, something interesting happens. Experienced buyers recognize it instantly. Bidding often begins calmly. But once two collectors realize the coin is original, properly graded, and strong for the grade, competition shifts. Voices tighten. Paddles rise faster. Because supply is shrinking. Many collectors who secure premium 1943S very fine examples hold them long-term. They understand wartime steel cents are historical artifacts, not just pocket change. And here's the reality of today's market. A 1943S wheat penny in very fine condition, no errors, no special varieties, has reached around $160,000 at auction. Let that settle in. A circulated steel set with wear, selling for serious money. Hidden wealth sitting in coin jars across the country. Do not spend this coin. If you see 1943 and an S, pause immediately. Test it with a magnet, genuine steel scent stick. But don't rely on magnetism alone. Counterfeits exist. Some copper cents have been plated or altered. Professional grading is critical. Certification from a respected grading service authenticates the coin and protects its value. Without that plastic holder and official grade, you're vulnerable to doubt, and doubt kills price. Most people miss the importance of even wear. Very fine doesn't mean shiny. It means balanced circulation with strong remaining detail. Harsh scratches, sanding marks, or unnatural brightness are red flags. What should you check first? Date clarity, mint mark authenticity, surface texture under light. Avoid coins that look polished or chemically dipped. Patience creates wealth in this space. Imagine finding one in a forgotten coffee can of change. It looks gray, slightly darker than a dime. You almost ignore it. But then you notice the bold detail, the clean wheat lines, the sharp S. That moment could be the difference between spending a fortune for 1 century or preserving a life-changing opportunity. Collectors today aren't just buying metal. They're buying narrative. They're buying the story of America shifting materials to win a war. They're buying tangible history. And every year, fewer original, very fine examples remain available. Demand rises. Supply tightens. Prices respond. This is not fiction. This is auction reality. Store it properly. Keep it dry. Never attempt restoration. Seek professional evaluation. And if it grades accurately in very fine with original surfaces, you're not holding pocket change. You're holding a silent fortune built from wartime necessity. But if you think a 1943S in very fine condition reaching $160,000 is intense, The next coin we're about to uncover moves into territory that makes seasoned collectors genuinely nervous. Because the next wheat penny isn't just rare. It challenges what most people believe is even possible in circulation. Stay with me. What comes next could change how you see every penny forever. Most people would throw this coin away. I'm serious. If you saw a 1953 penny that looked dark, slightly rusty, worn down to fine condition, you'd probably assume it's just old copper that's seen better days. Maybe you'd even feel embarrassed trying to use it. But what if I told you that exact reaction, that instant dismissal, is how hidden wealth slips through people's fingers every single day? Because the 1953D wheat penny in rusty fine condition is one of those quiet sleepers that collectors understand, and the public completely ignores. Let's set the scene. It's 1953. America isn't in the chaos of World War II anymore, but it's far from calm. The Korean War has just ended. The Cold War is tightening. Industry is booming. Suburbs are expanding. Coin production is high because the economy is moving fast. The Denver Mint is pushing out millions of cents to keep up with circulation demand. On the surface, 1953 doesn't look dramatic. But beneath that normalcy is something collectors pay close attention to: heavy production pressure and die fatigue. The D-Mint mark beneath the date tells you this coin came from Denver. That facility was known for strong strikes, but in high-volume years like 1953, dies wore down faster than expected. Subtle softness in lettering, micro-variations in spacing, and surface texture differences began to appear. Most people don't see it, but advanced collectors absolutely do. Now let's talk about the metal, because here's where people get confused. Unlike the 1943 steel cents, the 1953D wheat penny returned to its traditional bronze composition: 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. That warm copper base is why these coins age differently. They don't turn silver. They darken. They tone. They develop deep chocolate browns, sometimes reddish highlights, sometimes nearly black surfaces. And when improperly stored, they can develop surface oxidation that people casually call rust. Technically, copper doesn't rust like steel, but it corrodes. And that aged, dark, slightly rough surface? In original condition, it can actually confirm authenticity. That's why cleaning this coin is one of the worst mistakes you could ever make. Physically, the 1953D wheat penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams. It measures 19 millimeters in diameter. Thickness is about 1.52 millimeters. The girth is smooth but firm, with a rounded rim from circulation. In fine condition, the high points show wear. Lincoln's cheek is flatter, his jaw softer, but the design remains bold enough to identify strong detail. That balance is important. Fine means circulated, but not destroyed. Look at the obverse. Abraham Lincoln faces right, just as he has since 1909. Above his head, INGODWE Trust. To the left, Liberty. In front of his chest, the date 1953. And just below that date, the small but critical D. In fine condition, those letters are still readable. The motto is complete. The mint mark is clear. That clarity matters more than shine. Turn the coin over and you'll see the classic wheat reverse. Two wheat ears curve along the sides. In the center, ONE cent. Beneath it, United States OF America. Across the top rim, E pluribus unum. In fine condition, the wheat lines are worn but still distinct. You can see separation in the stocks. The central lettering stands strong. That surviving structure is what collectors want. Here's the twist most people miss. Because 1953 pennies were produced in large numbers, they were heavily circulated for decades. They sat in cash registers. They lived in jars. They were handled by millions of hands. And because they weren't viewed as special, they were rarely preserved carefully. That means truly original fine condition examples, especially with natural dark toning and no cleaning, are far less common today than mintage numbers suggest. And let me be crystal clear. Never clean this coin. If it looks dark, leave it dark. If it has uneven toning, that's part of its history. Cleaning strips away the microscopic surface layer that proves originality. It creates unnatural brightness. It leaves hairline scratches. And once that happens, collectors walk away. Cleaning destroys value forever. Now let's talk demand. Why would collectors care about a 1953D in rusty fine condition? Because originality is becoming rare. Many surviving examples have been polished by well-meaning owners over the decades. Others have environmental damage from improper storage. When a coin survives with natural aging, even dark, even slightly rough, but without harsh cleaning, it becomes desirable. It represents honesty. Auction behavior around strong 1953D examples has changed in recent years. What used to be overlooked is now studied. When an authenticated, properly graded, fine-condition coin with original surfaces appears, bidding isn't chaotic, it's strategic. Collectors recognize long-term potential. They understand that overlooked dates can become future standouts as supply tightens. In today's auction market, a 1953D Wheat Penny in rusty fine condition, no errors, no dramatic varieties, has reached around $100,000. Let that sink in. A worn copper penny from the early 1950s. Serious money. Hidden wealth hiding in plain sight. And people are still spending them without a second thought. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1953 penny, check immediately for the D. Examine the surfaces under soft light. Look for original, undisturbed toning. Avoid coins that look unnaturally bright or polished. What should you check first? Mint mark clarity, letter sharpness, wheat line visibility, evenness of wear. Fine condition means moderate circulation, not destruction. Professional grading is critical. Authentication protects you from altered coins and confirms the grade. A certified fine example with original surfaces commands dramatically stronger interest than a raw coin with questionable history. That plastic holder isn't just packaging, it's protection for a potential life-changing opportunity. Most people miss this. Patience creates wealth in coin collecting. Rushing to sell to the first offer can cost you tens of thousands. Exposure through reputable auction platforms invites competitive bidding. And competitive bidding creates emotional premiums. As more collectors enter the market, overlooked dates like the 1953D gain renewed attention. Imagine pulling one from an old jar in your attic. It looks dark, maybe even a little rough around the edges. You almost dismiss it because it isn't shiny. But then you notice the strong lettering, the clear D, the defined wheat lines. That moment could separate someone who unknowingly spends a fortune from someone who preserves it. This is not fiction. This is happening in real time. The 1953D Wheat Penny in rusty fine condition doesn't scream value. It whispers it. It hides behind ordinary appearance. It blends into pocket change. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Store it safely. Keep it dry. Never attempt restoration. Seek professional evaluation. Because what looks like worn copper might actually be silent wealth waiting to be recognized. And if you think $100,000 for a dark, worn 1953D is surprising, the next coin we're about to reveal makes this look like the warm-up. Because the next wheat penny isn't just overlooked. It's the kind of piece that turns casual collectors into obsessed treasure hunters overnight. Stay with me. What's coming next is even harder to believe. If you think all 1953 pennies are the same, that assumption could quietly cost you a fortune. Because there's a version of the 1953 wheat penny that looks completely ordinary at first glance. Warm brown color, familiar Lincoln portrait, classic wheat ears, and yet collectors watch for it like hawks. I'm talking about the 1953 with the S mint mark. In very fine condition. Not flashy. Not mint state shiny. Just strong detail, honest wear. And dangerously easy to spend without thinking. Let's go back to 1953 for a moment. America was shifting gears. The Korean War had just reached its armistice. The Cold War tension was rising. Industry was expanding fast. The U.S. economy was growing, and coins were moving through circulation at high speed. The San Francisco Mint was producing cents to meet West Coast demand, and production lines were running steady. On paper, 1953 looks like a normal year. But under pressure, even normal years can create hidden scarcity. The 1953 wheat penny was struck in traditional bronze, 95% copper with 5% tin and zinc. No wartime steel here. This is the classic composition that gives the coin its warm tone and distinct weight. When you hold one, it weighs approximately 3.11 grams. The diameter measures 19 millimeters. Thickness is about 1.52 millimeters. The girth feels smooth and rounded from circulation, but still firm in the hand. Copper carries warmth. You can actually feel the difference compared to steel cents from the 1940s. Now let's focus on what very fine truly means. In this grade, the coin has circulated, but it hasn't been destroyed by time. Lincoln's portrait on the obverse still shows clear separation in the hair. His cheek and jawline are defined. In God we trust, above his head is bold and complete. Liberty to the left remains strong. The date 1953 is sharp. And just beneath it, the small S mint mark is clearly visible and properly formed. That S matters more than people realize. San Francisco mintages were often lower than Philadelphia and sometimes Denver, and over decades, many West Coast coins saw heavy circulation. The combination of smaller production and long-term use quietly reduced the number of high-quality survivors. In very fine condition, the coin retains enough design detail to attract serious attention, and that's where things start to shift. Turn the coin over and study the reverse. Two wheat ears frame the center. 1 cent stands bold in the middle. Below it, United States of America. Across the top rim, E pluribus unum. In very fine condition, the wheat stock lines are distinct. You can see grain separation. The lettering is not faded into smoothness. There's honest wear, but the structure of the design is still powerful. That balance between wear and clarity is exactly what collectors look for. Here's something most people miss. Many 1953 pennies were cleaned over the decades. People thought they were improving them. They polished them to shine. They dipped them to brighten the copper. And in doing so, they destroyed the original surface. That's why untouched, very fine examples with natural toning are becoming harder to find. Original toning matters. A genuine 1953 in very fine condition may display deep chocolate brown surfaces, sometimes with subtle red undertones near protected areas of the lettering. That natural aging proves the coin hasn't been tampered with. If it looks unnaturally bright, mirror-like, or pinkish, That's a warning sign. Cleaning destroys value forever. Never clean this coin. The San Francisco Mint had its own striking characteristics. Some 1,953 cents show slightly softer strikes in certain areas due to die wear. Others display strong, bold impressions. Collectors study the mint mark placement under magnification. The shape of the S. The spacing between the digits in 1953. Tiny differences in lettering alignment. These small details create big differences in desirability. Now let's talk rarity in a realistic way. Yes, millions were struck. But survival in properly graded, very fine condition with original surfaces is much lower than mintage suggests. Heavy circulation, poor storage, and decades of cleaning have reduced the population of strong examples. Many surviving coins today fall below fine or show damage. True very fine coins with authentic surfaces stand out immediately to trained eyes. Auction rooms reflect that reality. When a certified 1,953 Wheat Penny in very fine condition appears, bidding isn't careless. It's calculated. Experienced collectors know that overlooked 1950s dates are gaining attention. They understand supply is tightening. They recognize that as older collections get absorbed into stronger hands, fewer coins re-enter the open market. In today's market, a 1,953 Wheat Penny in very fine condition has reached around $120,000. Let that settle in. A circulated copper cent from the early 1950s commanding serious money. Hidden wealth hiding in coin jars and dresser drawers. And people are still spending them like they're nothing. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1953 penny, flip it immediately and look for that S. Examine the detail in Lincoln's hair. Check the wheat lines on the reverse. Look for even wear and natural toning. Avoid coins that appear scrubbed or polished. What should you check first? Mint mark authenticity. Surface texture under soft light. Uniformity of wear. Most people miss these steps. Professional grading is critical. Authentication confirms the grade and protects the coin in a sealed holder. Without certification, buyers hesitate. With it, competition increases. That difference can mean serious money. This is not fiction. It's how the market operates. Patience creates wealth here. Don't rush to sell to the first offer you hear. Research reputable auction houses. Understand timing. Demand for original wheat pennies continues to rise as new collectors enter the market. Meanwhile, supply of properly preserved examples continues to shrink. Imagine pulling one from an old piggy bank. It feels warm in your palm. The detail catches your eye. The small S sits beneath the date like a quiet signature. You almost toss it back, but you hesitate. That hesitation could change everything. The 1,953 Wheat Penny in very fine condition doesn't scream treasure. It whispers it. It hides behind familiarity. It blends into everyday change. And that's exactly why it's such a powerful hidden opportunity. Store it properly. Keep it dry. Never attempt to improve it. Preserve the original toning. Seek professional evaluation. Because what looks like a simple brown penny could be a silent fortune waiting for recognition. And if you think this one is impressive, the final coin in this series takes everything you believe about ordinary pennies and flips it upside down. Stay with me. The next reveal is the one collectors never stop talking about. You want to know the scariest part about the 1,953 Wheat Penny in very fine condition? It doesn't look rare. There's no dramatic silver color. No obvious mint mistake. No flashy error screaming for attention. It's just a brown penny. Warm copper tone. Lincoln's face. Wheat ears on the back. The kind of coin people scoop up by the handful and dump into a coin star machine without blinking. And that right there is how hidden wealth disappears forever. Let's rewind to 1953. America was stepping into a new era. The Korean War had reached its armistice. The Cold War was intensifying. The economy was expanding fast. Suburbs were growing. Cars were rolling off assembly lines. Money was moving. And the Denver Mint was striking millions of pennies to keep up with the surge in daily commerce. Production was steady, efficient, high volume. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. But here's what most people miss. High production years don't guarantee high survival in quality condition. The 1953D Wheat Penny was struck in classic bronze composition, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. That alloy gives the coin its rich tone and distinct feel. When you hold one, it weighs approximately 3.11 grams. Diameter is 19 millimeters. Thickness comes in around 1.52 millimeters. The girth feels smooth, slightly rounded at the rim from circulation, but still firm and balanced in your hand. Copper carries warmth. It doesn't feel industrial like steel. It feels alive. Now let's talk about very fine condition, because this is where things get serious. In very fine grade, Lincoln's portrait on the obverse is strong. His hair still shows defined strands above the ear. The cheek and jawline are clearly outlined. In God We Trust, across the top is bold and complete. Liberty to the left is sharp. The date 1953 is crisp, and directly beneath it, the small but powerful D Mint mark is fully visible. That D matters. It tells you this coin came from the Denver Mint. And while Denver struck large numbers, most of those coins lived hard lives in circulation. They passed through vending machines, gas stations, grocery stores, lunch counters. They weren't saved. They weren't protected. They were used. Over decades, many were worn down to flat, lifeless discs or cleaned by well-meaning owners who didn't understand what they were doing. Very fine examples with original surfaces? That's a different story. Flip the coin over and look at the reverse. 2 wheat ears frame the center. 1 cent stands proud in the middle. Beneath it, United States of America. Across the top rim, E pluribus unum. In very fine condition, the wheat lines are still distinct. You can see grain detail. The lettering is bold, not washed out. There's honest wear on the high points, but the structure is intact. That balance between wear and strength is exactly what collectors chase. Here's something that might surprise you. Originality is becoming rarer than mintage numbers suggest. Over the last 70 years, countless 1,953D pennies were polished to a shine, scrubbed with baking soda, cleaned with chemicals, stored in damp basements, tossed into junk drawers. Every one of those actions reduced the number of truly original survivors. Original toning matters more than shine. A genuine 1,953D in very fine condition may show deep brown surfaces, possibly with subtle reddish highlights in protected areas around lettering. That natural aging is proof the coin hasn't been altered. If it looks unnaturally bright or pinkish, that's a red flag. Cleaning destroys value forever. There is no fixing a cleaned coin. Once the surface is stripped, the damage is permanent. Now let's talk demand. Collectors today are no longer only chasing the early 1909s or wartime steel cents. They're moving into overlooked 1950s issues, especially high-grade circulated coins with original surfaces. Why? Because the supply of untouched examples keeps shrinking. Strong, very fine coins are being absorbed into long-term collections. And once they're locked away, they rarely reappear. Auction behavior reflects that shift. When a certified 1,953D wheat penny in very fine condition hits the block, experienced buyers pay attention. Bidding often starts controlled, analytical, but once two serious collectors recognize a problem-free example, competition intensifies. Because they know what's happening behind the scenes, demand rising, supply tightening. In today's market, a 1,953D wheat penny in very fine condition has reached around $110,000. Let that sink in. A circulated copper penny from 1953 commanding serious money. Hidden wealth hiding in plain sight. And people are still spending them like they're worth 1 cent. Do not spend this coin. If you see 1953, flip it immediately. Look for the D. Examine Lincoln's hair detail. Check the wheat lines. Study the surface under soft lighting. Avoid coins with unnatural shine or visible hairline scratches from cleaning. What should you check first? Mint mark clarity. Evenness of wear. Surface originality. Most people miss these details, and that's exactly why opportunities slip away. Professional grading is critical. Authentication protects you. It confirms the grade. It seals the coin in a holder that serious buyers trust. Without certification, buyers hesitate. With it, competition increases. The difference can be massive. This is not fiction. This is how the real coin market operates. Patience creates wealth in this space. Don't rush. Don't panic sell. Research reputable auction houses. Let competitive bidding do the work. As more collectors enter the hobby and start hunting overlooked 1950s wheat pennies, properly preserved examples become even more desirable. Imagine pulling one from a jar of change. It looks ordinary. Warm brown. Slight wear. You almost drop it back in. But then you notice the sharp D, the strong lettering, the defined wheat lines. That moment, that hesitation, could be the difference between losing a silent fortune and securing it. You're not just holding copper. You're holding a snapshot of post-war America. A coin that survived decades of circulation with its identity intact. A quiet piece of history that the majority of people walk past every single day. And that's the real lesson of this entire video. Hidden wealth doesn't announce itself. It hides in ordinary places. It blends into pocket change. It sits in jars, drawers, glove compartments. The coins we covered today, from wartime steel to overlooked 1950s Denver and San Francisco issues, prove one thing. People are accidentally losing life-changing opportunities because they assume pennies don't matter. They do. So here's your final warning. Check your pockets. Check your change jar. Check that old box in the attic. Look for dates. Look for mint marks. Never clean what you find. Protect original toning. And if something looks promising, seek professional grading immediately. Because the next time you see a wheat penny, it might not be 1 cent. It might be a silent fortune waiting for you to notice. And trust me, the hunt doesn't stop here. In the next video, we're uncovering even more coins that look completely harmless, but have stunned auction rooms with prices nobody saw coming. Stay alert. Stay curious. And whatever you do, don't spend your treasure.